Live setup. Hi everybody on Facebook Live. We're here at City Gate tonight. Thanks for joining us. I have one announcement. We're going to do I call it a women's retreat. It's a one-day kind of day for women to, set themselves apart away from normal life. It's going to be Saturday, September 28th. And I have little invitation, I guess, things that you call it that talks about it. It's $25 a person. That will include a continental breakfast, lunch, supplies that we'll be using that day, coffee, tea, bottled water, everything like that that you need for the day. We have room for 35 people. So I hope we get that many. I have done these things in the past, and it's a lot of fun, and it's great to meet, a great way to meet new people, and draw closer to each other and to God. So I'm trying to get the word out in enough time that people can plan for that. So if you have any questions about it, if you're on the live, you can either message me or ask questions in the comments or whatever. Does anybody have questions about that? Because I feel like I didn't explain it very well.
Where is it at?
It's going to be on 322, what used to be the old Abundant Living property. I forget what they call it now.
Hopewell Forge.
Hopewell Forge.
Properties.
Yeah. So it'll be in the bottom level of the big barn that's there. And feel free to invite friends. It'll be for first come, first serve. We have room for 35. So, whoever pays first is on the list first, I guess. I don't like to be that way, but we kind of have to be that way. And if you can't afford it,
I want 4 tickets.
sold.
Yeah,
To the woman in the hat. So, if you can't afford the $25, let me know, because there will be a way if you really want to come. So just contact me. Yes?
Oh, we wanted to know what time to what time.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's what I forgot.
Yeah.
It'll be 9 a.m. to 3-ish, because I'm not quite sure. It might be over before 3. It just kind of depends how it all works out. And it's called Sweet Life Cafe. So there'll be a lot of coffee and food and stuff, a little service project, sweets, yeah. So it's just kind of a nice day away from your regular grind, So I have these little things. I'll put them back on the table, and I also have a sign-up sheet for anybody who wants to sign up tonight. You can give me your money later if you're here tonight. You weren't prepared for that. So if you have any questions about it, you can see me then. So I'm going to call up our speaker tonight, and that is Pearl Andy's House. I just have to gather my stuff up here. Well, welcome, Pearl. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And I'm just going to say a prayer for Pearl here, and then we'll get started. And I know we're all anxious to hear her story and how God has showed up in her life. Well, Father God, thank you so much for Pearl and her willingness to come and share her story with us. I just pray you take away any nervousness, because sometimes that camera can do that, and I get it. But we just want to give you the honor and the glory for Pearl, her life, her witness for you. And we just thank you and praise you for what you've done in her life. I've not heard her story yet, but I'm sure you've done amazing things. And we just thank you and praise you for that. And we just ask you to speak through her tonight and let us hear what you want us to hear. And we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Hi, ladies. Thank you for coming to listen to me tonight. I have never really told my story in depth. Part of the reason is because of this. It is so overwhelming to me, and I'm still living it. So Some of you have heard bits and pieces, and some of you have lived it with me. And some of you will hear it for the first time. And all of it is possible because of God and a woman named Lori, a team of exceptional skilled doctors and medical staff at the University of Pennsylvania Hospital in Philadelphia. 7 years and 10 months ago, a woman named Lori Hansen passed away at the hospital at HUP. Lori was a wife, a mother, a sister, a daughter, an aunt, and a friend to those around her. She had an incredible love for her boys, Matthew, who was 14, and Chase, who was 8, and cherished her marriage to George, her husband. She loved God's green earth, flowers, fall days, and snowy days. And most of all, she was an organ donor. Where her journey ends, mine begins. And without God's grace and Lori's unselfish gift, I would not be here today. In 2014, I started to really notice a difference in my breathing. I was huffy-puffy. I didn't like to do stairs. Personally, I still don't like to do stairs. But I was tired all the time, short of breath. I actually had a large walk-through garden in my yard that I actually, because I couldn't take care of it anymore, had people come in and tear it out, till it up, and turn it to grass. And I still miss that garden. I also decided that I needed to seriously consider quitting smoking. So on March 13th of 2015, I woke up, I smoked my last cigarette, and I have not smoked since. I won't say it wasn't hard, and I won't say there hasn't been an occasion where I would like to, but I haven't. I thought that that would make me start to feel better. In fact, I started to feel worse. I didn't know it at the time, but that is the way my disease worked. It just kind of lingers there waiting, and then when you least expect it, it kicked into high gear, and you're asking how, why, when. It continued to be an issue one night at work. I had an episode where I was taking finished work from my area to shipping, and by the time I got there, I could not breathe. I was gasping for air, literally gasping. I made it back to my own workstation and sat at the computer to rest until I could breathe again, and that was my wake-up call. After explaining to the doctor my symptoms, she sent me for a stress test. Afton will remember this. She didn't think it would be safe for me to do a traditional stress test, so she scheduled a nuclear stress test. And that is where they inject you with a concoction that causes your blood pressure and your heart rate to rise to mimic stress in your body. However, for me, there were side effects, scary side effects. I remember looking at Afton, and she asked me if I was okay. And I told her if the building was on fire, they would have to push me out on the gurney because I literally could not feel my body. I felt like I melted into the mattress. Eventually the tech did give me the antidote after the test was over, and I did walk from the room, but that test led to a cardiologist. And when I met with the cardiologist, he told me that it wasn't my heart, it's your lungs. But because Ephrata Hospital says there's something wrong with your heart, now I have to do a needless heart catheterization on you. So he did the heart cath, and he would not let me leave Lancaster General without seeing a pulmonologist or having an appointment before I left. So our next stop was a pulmonologist in Lancaster, and he was not our favorite doctor in the process, but he did get us to the next step in the journey. Under his care, I was asked to do a 6-minute walk test, which I never got to take. The day of the appointment, I walked from the waiting room to the test area, and my oxygen dropped to 84. The tech told me they would not even let me take the test, and I could not leave the building without oxygen. I was devastated. What would people think? Now I need oxygen 24/7. I work in a factory. I can't work anymore. What would people say? She's so young. Why is she on oxygen? It didn't take me long to get to the point that I really didn't care what people thought or how I looked. I just knew that I was alive and I could breathe. Eventually, we did get the bronchoscopy, and the results were inconclusive. Then a lung biopsy, again with no clear results, except later I found out that my lungs were already looking like Swiss cheese. There were other tests, doctor visits, and diagnosis of idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. There is no known cure for this, and there is no known cause and no known cure except a lung transplant. I was told I had 6 to 9 months to live and that I needed a double lung transplant. He referred us to HUP, and so, yeah. And I have to tell you that, and she can tell you, she can confirm, because she was in the room, that when he told me that I needed a double lung transplant, I laughed at him. And I told him that he was crazy, that I wasn't sick, I just don't breathe right. And God's not done with me yet. So, the referral was made, conversations were had on the phone, and it was arranged for me to go to HUP for the week of June 13th for evaluation. We stayed at a transplant house 4 blocks from the hospital, which would later be my home for recovery. We arrived on June 13th like babes in the woods, no idea where we were going or what we were doing. We met Dr. James Lee, who would be my doctor for the next 4 years. He confirmed the diagnosis of idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, and that yes, I did indeed need a double lung transplant. A single would not be good enough. The doctors and medical staff were amazing, and Mark was a rock. He walked with me, and later he pushed me in a wheelchair, carried stuff, worried, met people, got food, and he never let me know how scared he was. But I didn't tell him how scared I was either. I kept believing God wasn't done with me yet. After the week was done, we came home, and the next appointment was at the end of June. At that appointment, we learned that I would be accepted for the lung transplant, but there was still more to do. 2 more pages of things to do. Once again, God was there providing a way for me to get it done. As I got worse, my need for oxygen kept going up, so I didn't drive anymore. And my daughter Kiev was currently unemployed, and she took me everywhere I needed to go. She would load up the car with extra oxygen tanks, and off we would go. To pulmonary rehab for vertigo, doctor appointments, tests, and sometimes just to breakfast. 6 weeks later, on August 2nd, Mark and I went to Philly, and those 2 pages were done. When I gave Dr. Lee the paperwork I had, and he saw the results in the computer, he said he rarely sees a patient as sick as I am get all that done in such a short time. Of course, I told him, I'm not sick, I just don't breathe right, and God's not done with me yet. Now he would present all those results to the team, and they would have a discussion as to whether I would be actively listed on the lung transplant list. And we would have a decision in a couple days to a week. August 4th, I received a phone call from one of the administrators to tell me that I would be listed for a double lung transplant. I thank God that I had passed that hurdle, and now we wait. This is the absolute worst time for telemarketers and robocalls, because every time the phone would ring, we would jump. Could this be it? During the wait, we also prayed. We prayed a lot. And not just us, but our family, our friends, and people we have never met. We were placed on prayer chains and had prayer warriors we didn't even know we had and have never met. Matthew 6:6 says, "But when you pray, go into your room, close your door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you." Well, my inner room is, and always has been, the bathroom. Because I know when I go in there, nobody's going to bother me. Except my cat if I don't shut the door right. Hebrews 4:16 reads, "Let us approach the throne of grace with confidence so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our greatest time of need." Well, I was in my greatest time of need. I had just taken a shower, and that's like work now because I can hardly breathe. And I pretty much told God that if he was going to do something, he had to do it soon. I really didn't think I'd be around much longer, but it was his will, not mine. My need for oxygen continued to increase. I now had 2 oxygen concentrators in the basement hooked together so that they would provide me with 15 liters per minute that I needed to breathe during the day and 8 liters that I needed at night when I slept. We lived 4 doors from the park in Denver. And as all of you know, the fair is held in September in the park. Well, we have a weenie roast the last night of the fair. And we roast hot dogs over the fire, have all kinds of food and fixins, and just have a good time visiting. The fireworks were a bonus too when they had them. Mark really didn't want me to have a weenie roast. I, however, felt that it could possibly be my last one. So after much discussion and planning, we decided to have it. On September 17th, we put a 22-pound oxygen tank in the bushes and a hose long enough for me to sit with people, but not close enough to cook a hot dog. It's kind of funny because, you know, fire and oxygen don't mix so well, but we did it, and I spent time with friends and family. We listened to Flame and Dick and the Hot Rods and ate food and had a great night. The next day, September 18th, was a different story. I really didn't think it would affect me that way. I could barely breathe. I had to admit to Mark that maybe he was right, and it was not my best idea. But he didn't say I told you so. He just told me to rest. So I spent most of the day on the couch. Grandma Peters came to visit me that day, and I found out later that she was worried because I looked so gray. We went to bed early that night because we had a morning appointment in Philly with Dr. Lee. I already knew that if I made it to that appointment, he was not going to let me come home. He would admit me to the hospital and make me wait there for my lung transplant. I would never make that appointment, and I would not see him for another 2.5 weeks. Since I had been actively listed, when we went to bed, we always took all the phones. We still had a landline then. Yeah, it took us a while to get up with the times. Sometime between 2 and 2:30, our house phone rang. Groggily, I rolled over to answer and give the person calling at this hour of the morning a not so nice hello. Because everyone knows you don't call after 9 o'clock unless it's an emergency or the house is on fire. However, God tied my tongue. And all I got to say after the groggy, all I got to say was a groggy hello. There was a very pleasant voice on the other end of the phone telling me that she was from the Transplant Institute at Hope and that they had lungs for me. I wasn't groggy anymore. After I got off the phone, we got ready and we called our daughter, who in turn made more phone calls. They made arrangements for someone to come to their house so their daughter wasn't alone, and they met us in Philadelphia. The ride to the hospital was pretty quiet. Each of us in our own thoughts about what was going to happen. I was expecting our arrival at the emergency entrance to be like you see on TV, and that was not the case. We were met by security, and I told them I needed to go to Silverstein 10, and they said, we'll take care of that. I was officially admitted to HUP at 4:21 a.m. on September 19th and taken to the 10th floor of Silverstein and put in a room where we would wait for 20 hours before the surgery would even begin. During that 20 hours, I don't think I slept much at all. My daughter and her husband went home to check on their daughter and returned a couple hours later. Mark kept me company, but he did take smoke breaks occasionally, and we silently prayed. Also, during those 20 hours, Lori's family would learn that she would not live after a severe brain aneurysm. Matthew and Chase had to say goodbye to their beloved mother, and George had to say goodbye to his wife. Paperwork had to be signed, tests had to be done, and procedures had to be followed. Around 8 p.m. on the night of September 19th, I was taken from the room to the pre-op area and prepped for surgery. Mark got to come and sit with me until they took me to the operating room. It was very quiet. I went to the operating room approximately 8:45 or so, and I sat propped up on the operating table, and a small statured man came into the room I had never met before. And he came up to my shoulder and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he introduced himself as Dr. Kristen Bermudez, the surgeon that would do the transplant. He told me not to worry, he's going to take very good care of me. He left the room, and the next time he came in the door, he said it was a go. Then it was like a beehive. The last thing I remember was being in the middle of the Lord's Prayer. The surgery lasted from 10 p.m. Monday night until about 6:30 Tuesday morning. I was supposed to be his easiest surgery of the week. I was the hardest. As he was taking my disease-riddled lungs from my body, they were falling apart in his hands. Lori's lungs were a little larger than mine, but they would eventually adjust to the space of my lungs. The first thing I remember is waking up and realizing I wasn't in an operating room. The lights were different. And I said to myself, I'm alive. I have new lungs. Thank you, God. Next thing I remember is hearing my daughter tell me to relax. It's breathing for me. She was talking about the vent, but she tells me she wasn't there. Next I remember her talking about it again, and she wasn't there. Then I remember trying to call for help, but I couldn't talk because there was something in my throat. And again I heard her tell me, relax, it's breathing for you. She wasn't there. Later I tried to search for a call bell, but I couldn't move my arms. Apparently they had me restrained. Thankfully, a nurse came in and asked me if I was ready to get that thing out. And I mumbled, uh-huh. And she told me to take the deepest breath I could and cough. And like a miracle, it was gone. My first victory. And that's the last thing I remember for the next 2.5 days. I am told there were other small victories during that time. I sat in the chair. I did breathing treatments. I had conversations. I begged for pain medicine. I don't remember any of it. On the third day, I was moved from ICU to a regular room on Silverstein 10. I spent the next 2 weeks achieving more small victories, giving up supplemental oxygen, losing the chest tubes, removing that dreaded feeding tube, learning to give myself shots that I would need for the next 30 days, learning about the abundance of drugs that I would take for the rest of my life. I was released to go stay at the transplant house on October 3rd. I saw Dr. Lee on October 4th. October 7th was my first visit home. The transplant house allowed us to be gone 2 nights without losing our room. So we would come home on Friday nights, and when I returned on Sunday, a new family member would go with me. Mark, my sister, my daughter Kiev, my son-in-law Ben, and my daughter Afton. I also had visits from friends and family, and we took advantage of the beautiful courtyard at the transplant house. They tell you to be prepared to spend a minimum of 3 months in Philadelphia. On November 5th, my daughter Afton brought me home for good. I was released to go home in 6.5 weeks. Of course, coming home meant changes of things. I think for the first year I almost became a germaphobe because anything could make me sick and could possibly cause me to be hospitalized or worse. Our family had to learn to adjust as well. If there's sickness in their house, they had to stay home. If there was sickness in their house, I couldn't go visit. That rule's still in effect, as well as other things to keep the spread of anything contagious. That made COVID really tough. But where there's a will, there's a way. I would make a large batch of soup on Mondays, and they would stop by and pick it up off the porch. That way we could talk through the door, and we would know that we were all okay. I could never have made it this far without the grace of God and loving support of my family. Mark was and still is my rock. He never faltered through any of this, and if he did, he didn't let me see it. Our children stepped up without question. Even my son-in-law took off work to help. Deb and Lynn came to visit several times, brought our granddaughter for a surprise visit, and always prayed with us and prayed for us. In the last 7 years, I have been blessed beyond measure. I have only been in the hospital post-transplant a handful of times. 7 months after my transplant, myself and family members participated in the Donor Dash for Gift of Life in Philly. The walk is a 3K walk in conjunction with a 5 and a 10K run. Being the overachievers that we are, we walked the 5K. We did family trips to the beach where I had no trouble climbing the 21 steps to the boardwalk apartment. I have seen granddaughters grow into beautiful young women. I have been to graduations and award ceremonies and a wedding in my backyard in May. I have had the privilege of seeing 3 great grandchildren come into the world and watch them grow. I've gone places I have never thought I would go. A girls' trip to Waco and San Antonio with Debbie and my nieces. A trip to Alaska with Debbie and her family. Arizona to see my sister in the Grand Canyon. And in August, Lord willing, I will be seeing Pink with my daughter and granddaughter. Those are some of the big things, but the little things are just as special. Sunrises, sunsets, flowers of spring, Tuesday coffee dates with Afton and sometimes my daughter-in-law Katie, family gatherings, holidays, lunch with school friends, my feet hitting the floor in the morning. Even though my body groans with stiffness, and through it all, Lori has always been in my thoughts and prayers. I have never forgotten and will always be thankful for her gift of life. Lori's family has also moved on. Her boys are growing into fine men. Matt graduated from Robert Morris University with a Master of Business Administration degree, a business analytics certificate, and a bachelor's degree in finance and in sports management. Chase finished 9th grade this year and is an accomplished trumpet player, winning several awards. Both boys love bowling, NASCAR, the Eagles, Phillies, and Flyers. George was remarried to a high school friend last year, and they appear to be happy. We have never met, but we do share a friendship on Facebook and a bond that will not be broken. At some point, I would like to meet them, but until then, God's not done with me yet. sorry.
It was awesome. No, go right ahead. I probably need one too. Wow, anybody comments, questions, anything, encouragements? Yeah. And
I never heard
That
it.
is so good. Yeah, I just love the way that you see all, all the beauty and all the blessings, the things that you've got to experience, and just.
I'm very blessed.
And after you go through something like that, it, I'm sure, makes everything so much,
CRISPR.
yes,
Yeah,
clearer,
That's a good word.
crisper.
You go through a lot of emotions. I mean, when I was that 2 weeks I was in the hospital, I didn't mention that I had hallucinations because one of the medicines that were given me caused me to see people in the corner, or you go through survivor's guilt. Why did she have to die so I could live? And eventually, it came to me that she didn't ask to die. She didn't ask to die. She volunteered to be an organ donor. The only person that died for me is Jesus Christ.
Right, good point, yeah.
And that took away the survivor's guilt.
Yeah, good point,
So,
right.
And how do you feel?
how do I feel? Well, the average lifespan of a lung transplant patient is 5 to 7 years. I'm beating the odds. I sleep with oxygen at night because I developed sleep apnea. And when I'm doing strenuous things, I have to work like vacuuming and unloading and loading the laundry, and I wear oxygen. I was thinking about doing your walk and talk, but I have to bring Oscar along. Okay. Oscar is, I named all my medical apparatuses. I needed them to be personable. So Oscar is my portable oxygen backpack. So he would have to come along. But anyway,
Yeah,
How old was
Jen
it
will
that you
carry
had the
it.
transplant?
I was 56,
How many years ago was that?
2016.
Oh, okay. 8 years ago. Wow, you did the awesome.
Afton, did you ever give up hope? Or, no, she's a
tough nut.
She wasn't gonna let this happen.
It's just she couldn't breathe right. That's all it was.
The rest of my body wasn't sick.
Right.
It's the lungs.
I've known Pearl for 42 years, and she is a strong woman.
45.
Is it 45?
That's a smart one.
Sean was
9?
Sean was 8 years, Sean was like 8 or 9 months when I first time I came to your house. And he's 45.
Okay.
He's gonna be 46.
She's
Time
a
flies.
strong woman.
She is.
Life
Yeah,
has
you
dealt
can
her
tell.
some
Wow.
pretty tough situations, even beyond
Wow.
her
She
health.
knows.
And she just comes out the other side, she's an amazing woman.
Well, and she gives God the credit. Like it's all, for his glory, like we were talking about before. And when people share their stories, that's what it's all about. And that's why we need to share, to give people hope. Because right now our world needs hope, right? And the hope is Jesus.
Do you still have to see the doctor on regular
Every three
visits?
to 4 months I go to Philadelphia to see the pulmonologist down there. And they do blood work. Well, I do blood work locally here,
Right.
but they do x-rays and I do a breathing test.
So they keep tabs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And the whole organ donation thing, my friend that was here who lost her son, and I forget how many people, are alive through his
An organ donor can
donations.
save 8 lives with organs and countless lives with skin and bone and tissue.
Yeah, that's what
Yes.
she had said too. Yeah, so even, in a death, there's hope and there's life, and, you know, so mark that on your driver's license.
I highly
Yeah.
recommend that because,
Yeah.
if you don't know, I'm a case of what can be
Mhm.
if you do
Right.
that.
Yes.
All of my children, I'm proud to say, are organ donors.
I'm an organ donor.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, me too. So, you said when you came out of surgery and you heard your daughter telling you different
It was
things.
her voice, clear as day. And she tells me she wasn't there.
I mean, I was there a lot of the time while she was intubated, but I wasn't talking to her, saying the things that she heard.
So,
We
you
had,
had an
we,
angel visit, I
we,
believe.
I'm sure I did. We, we had discussed the ventilator and don't try to pull it out, Mom. And we had these conversations, which I didn't think that at that stage of the game I would even remember, but she was, somebody with her voice
Mhm.
was in that room.
And it was probably her voice to calm
Mm-hmm.
you, you know, it was someone you knew. God's amazing, like he just does things like that, and it's like, wow, you're so cool. Yeah, and you had the early release,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, most people are in, I didn't jot down how long you said most people are
Most
in.
people are asked to spend 3 months
Oh,
in
3
Philly.
months.
2 weeks is the normal in the hospital, but then they're asked to spend, they're asked to prepare to spend 3 months, up to 3 months or more. I have a friend that had his transplant 4 years ago, and he was in the hospital for 8 or 9 months before he even got out to start rehab.
Oh, goodness.
So
And you
he
were
was
out in what?
6.5 weeks, I was done.
That's another miracle
Do
right
you know
there.
how many
Wow.
of the type of transplants you had are done at this hospital in, say, a year?
Let's see, I had my transplant in October, or had the transplant in September, went home in October. In November, we went back down for the 1,000th transplant, or heart transplant in that hospital since Dr. Bermudez stepped foot in it.
Wow. That's a lot.
So I'm sure that I don't know how many they do a year or, but
Yeah, that's.
another thing we found out later was the 20-hour wait not only was for Lori, but they don't tie up the operating rooms during the day for transplants because they're used for more emergency or, other scheduled things, so they do them overnight.
Interesting. Yeah, so you know what? I think God is really showing off with you.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Me too.
Wow, that's amazing. Does anybody else have any
Yes.
questions or?
You're inspiring.
Very, yes.
Thank you.
And it makes me remember to be thankful every day, no matter what stuff is going on.
I learned a long time ago, if you think you got it bad, just pick up the newspaper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
There's
always
always
somebody
somebody
that has
that has
worse.
it worse.
Yep, you're right. You're right, yes. Anyone?
There's a
I-
Tina that, I'm not sure her last name, Hi Pearl, thank you for sharing your story with us, may the Lord bless you always.
Thank you, Tina.
Nice, thank you, yeah. Okay, anyone?
Yeah, well, I had, I lost my mother in 2018. And, the Lord took her home. Found out that she had brain aneurysm. Nobody knew it. But it brought our family together. And I prayed for a long time. I just got off the phone with my stepdad. He wants me to come down and spend a week with him.
Nice.
That's what took me.
Oh, that's why you were late, yeah.
That's why I was
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't gonna
That's okay.
bring this up, because it's not part of this story, it's the irony of this story. God has a really twisted sense of humor. We had gone down to Philly because I needed to have a procedure done to check my pancreas, and we had got off the turnpike and we went to Park Place September 13th of the last year. November? Her birthday's in September. November 13th of this year. And we ate, and we're driving home, and I get a message from my granddaughter. Grandma, I don't know if you know this, but Mom's collapsed at work, and she's in the hospital.
Oh, no.
So we went immediately to the hospital, and we were met by the chaplain of Ephrata Hospital. And she took us to a room, and she sat us down, and I said, you know, you really make me nervous. And she said, I'm not here to make you nervous. I'm here to help you or get anything you need. I said, well, you know, when you're watching a TV show, chaplain walks in the room, it's usually bad news.
Yeah.
So we finally got to go up to Kiev's room, and she had a brain aneurysm. And it knocked her brain off center. And I still have a picture of her, of the X-ray, the CAT scan. So the ironic thing is that my daughter became an organ donor the same way that Lori did. She was flown to Lancaster General, and then she was flown the same night, the 14th. She was flown to Lancaster General, and they did their testing to declare her dead, brain dead, and then they flew her to Philly, and she became an organ donor that night. So, the irony of it,
At the age of
43, she was 43, and Lori was 44. And George was the first person to reach out to me when I said anything about it on Facebook, that he totally, I'm sorry, Afton, that he totally knows where we are, and it brought back a lot of memories for him, and that, you know, he wished us well. So, yeah.
Wow, yeah, I didn't realize that she was your daughter. Yeah. Yeah.
So I've had lots of good things, and I'm happy for them, and I've had things like that, and God's still good.
It's hard to see it sometimes, right?
It is.
But he is.
But she didn't suffer. She didn't suffer at all. She had a headache, and then it was over. And so, if I can't thank him for anything else, I can thank him for that, because that's what we all want. We don't want to suffer. We don't want our loved ones to suffer. So
Right.
he was there, and she
Pearl,
didn't
I
suffer.
don't know if you know this, but one of Kim's best friends was with Kiev.
You told me that.
Okay.
Yeah.
You told
Well,
me
I
that.
think it was my friend's sister. Yeah.
Yeah, you told me that, because it made me feel so good that she wasn't alone, that there was somebody
Yes,
there,
she was there.
and she was praying, and that made me feel
She was.
so much better.
Yeah. And Robin actually spoke here one night too. But yeah, she was praying right there at the time. So, wow. Well, thank you so much. You shared a lot. And wow, you know, you don't know what to say after all of that, but it's kind of a full circle thing with your donor's lungs, your daughter's a donor.
Yep.
And probably her lungs were donated.
No, she was
They
a
weren't-
smoker.
Oh, okay.
And if you smoke for 10 years or more, they can't be donated to a person, but they can be donated for research, which they were.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so wow. Wow, thank you so much for sharing and
You're more than
for
welcome.
feeling like you could share here. We try to make it a safe place for people to share, and that was your first time. You did amazing,
Mhm.
right? First time you're sharing. So come back anytime. You're always welcome. Wednesday nights. We still have snacks and stuff over there if you guys want to stay and talk or meet Pearl or talk with her. So thank you so much, Facebook friends. We'll be back next Wednesday night. So we'll see you then.